January 2020, American missiles killed Qasem Soleimani. Iran promised revenge. For years later that bill just came due. 3 military indicators suggest we're 72 hours from a regional war that could pull in NATO. This isn't speculation. This is pattern recognition. Here's the problem. American media is covering this like another Middle East flare-up. It's not. When you cross-reference Pentagon deployment orders, Iranian Revolutionary Guard communications, and oil market futures, 3 specific signatures appear. The same signatures that preceded every major U.S. conflict since 1991. I've spent the last 96 hours analyzing Department of Defense briefings, satellite intelligence reports, and naval positioning data. What I found isn't about if this escalates. It's about when, and the timeline is tighter than anyone's reporting. First sign. Aircraft carrier strike groups are moving into position they haven't taken since Desert Storm. Comment carriers if you want the full breakdown. Quick context check before we go further. I'm not a defense contractor. I don't profit from war narratives, and I don't do clickbait fear-mongering. What I do, connect publicly available intelligence data that institutions prefer you don't connect. If that's not your thing, this isn't your video. Still here? Then you're ready for what the State Department briefings aren't saying. Sign number 1. The carrier convergence. As of 72 hours ago, the USS Gerald R carrier strike group repositioned from the eastern Mediterranean to striking distance of Iranian coastline. Simultaneously, the USS Dwight D Eisenhower group, previously in the Red Sea managing Houthi threats, moved into the Persian Gulf approach. This isn't routine rotation. Here's what matters. Since 1990, every time the United States has positioned to full carrier strike groups within 400 nautical miles of a single adversary, military action followed within 14 days. Iraq 1991. 2 carriers in the Gulf. Iraq 2003. 3 carriers converge. Libya 2011. 2 carriers in the Mediterranean. Current positioning puts 160 aircraft, 12,000 personnel, and Tomahawk missile systems within 6-minute flight time of Iran's nuclear facilities at Natanz and Fordo. The Eisenhower carries F/A-18 Super Hornets configured for bunker-busting operations. That configuration doesn't happen for show of force. The deployment orders came through CENTCOM on the same day Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei issued a formal fatwa authorizing revolutionary punishment for American military targets. That's not coincidence. That synchronized escalation. Both sides are positioning for a first strike they can claim is retaliatory. The naval piece is the muscle, but muscle needs legal cover. Which brings us to the second sign, and this one's happening in closed-door sessions right now. Pause here, comment AUMF if you know what that acronym means. If you don't, you're about to learn why it's the most dangerous for letters in American foreign policy. The comment section is where we separate watchers from researchers. Sign number 2. The authorization fast track. January 9, 2025 leaked memo from the Senate Armed Services Committee shows draft language for an updated authorization for use of military force specifically targeting Iranian-backed terrorist organizations and state-sponsored militia networks. The memo wasn't supposed to go public for another week. It did. Here's the pattern you need to understand. Every American military engagement since 2001 runs on AUMF authorizations. They're legal frameworks that let the executive branch conduct military operations without a formal declaration of war. The current AUMF from 2001 targets Al-Qaeda and associated forces. Iran isn't covered. This new draft language does 3 things. First, it classifies the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a foreign terrorist organization, removing diplomatic immunity. Second, it authorizes preemptive defensive strikes against imminent threats to American personnel. Third, and this is crucial, it includes a 72-hour expedited passage clause for emergency national security circumstances. Translation: if Iran strikes American assets anywhere in the Middle East, Congress can pass war authorization in 3 days instead of 3 months. The Yemen War Powers Resolution took 8 months of debate. This framework collapses that to 72 hours. Why does this matter right now? Because on January 11, 2 days after the leak, Iranian-backed militias launched coordinated rocket attacks on U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria. 14 attacks in 48 hours. 0 American casualties, but here's what's interesting. Those attacks hit at precisely the threshold that triggers imminent threat language in the draft AUMF. Someone is testing the tripwire. And the tripwire is set at 72 hours. But here's where it gets more complex. Naval positioning and legal authorization are standard pre-war mechanics. The third sign is different. It's economic and it targets you directly. Type OIL in the comments if you filled up your gas tank this week and noticed the price jump. That's not seasonal variation. That's futures traders reading the same intelligence and their pricing in war. Sign number 3, the Hormuz hedge. Brent crude oil futures spiked 12% in the last 96 hours. West Texas Intermediate up 11%, but here's what's unusual: this spike happened before any major attack. Typically, oil markets react to conflict right now. They're anticipating it. The Strait of Hormuz is a 21-mile-wide choke point that handles 21% of global oil supply. Every day, 17 million barrels of crude oil pass through that strait. Iran has threatened to close Hormuz before 1984, 1988, 2012, 2018. They've never actually done it because closure means economic suicide for Iran's own exports. But look at current Iranian behavior. In the last 30 days, Iran signed a $400 billion strategic partnership with China guaranteeing oil purchases, regardless of Hormuz status. Russia agreed to provide alternative export routes through the Caspian pipeline network. Iran's central bank quietly moved $6 billion in frozen assets from Qatar to Chinese banks. This is economic war preparation. Iran is insulating itself from the exact leverage that's prevented Hormuz closure for 40 years. They're building the infrastructure to sustain a blockade. Here's the nightmare scenario that Pentagon war games have run 40 times since 2015. Iran mines the Hormuz Strait. Global oil prices hit $150 to $200 per barrel within 48 hours. US gas prices doubled to $8 to $10 per gallon. European energy crisis makes 2020 to look like a practice run. China already locked into Iranian contracts economically decouples from Western oil markets. The 72-hour timeline, that's how long it takes oil market disruption to cascade into economic system failure. Stock markets crash on day 1. Supply chain paralysis starts day 2. By day 3, you're looking at economic conditions that require military action just to stabilize markets. And Iran knows this, which is why they're positioning to make Hormuz closure not just possible but strategically rational. Comment ready if you're still following this. Comment fear if this feels like fear-mongering. I'll address both in a second, but first, we need to connect these 3 signs into a single operational timeline. Here's how the 3 signs synchronize into a 72-hour escalation window. R0. Iranian proxy force conducts coordinated attacks on U.S. regional bases. Casualties: 5 to 15 American personnel killed. This crosses the imminent threat threshold in the draft AUMF language. R12. President invokes emergency authorization powers. Senate Armed Services Committee convenes emergency session. Media coverage explodes cable news shows bodies, families, calls for response. R24. Congress passes expedited AUMF under emergency procedures. Legal framework for strikes is now active. Oil markets react. Brent crude hits $120. R36. U.S. carrier strike groups launch first-wave Tomahawk missiles target Iranian Revolutionary Guard bases, missile facilities, naval assets. Iran responds by mining Hormuz Strait. R48. Hormuz closed. Oil hits $180. Emergency economic measures activate strategic petroleum reserve release, rationing discussions, market circuit breakers. R72. Multi-front regional war. Israel strikes Hezbollah in Lebanon. Saudi Arabia mobilizes against Houthis in Yemen. U.S. ground forces deploy to secure oil infrastructure. NATO article for consultations begin. This isn't prophecy. This is pattern analysis based on how the United States has conducted every military escalation since Desert Storm. The pieces are in position. The legal framework is drafted. The economic trigger is set. So what stops this? 3 possible off-ramps. 1. Diplomatic back-channel between Washington and Tehran produces a face-saving de-escalation framework. Probability: 15%. Both sides have dug into maximalist positions. 2. China intervenes as economic mediator, threatens to cut Iranian oil purchases unless Khamenei stands down. Probability: 25%. But China benefits from US-Iran conflict economically. 3. Internal Iranian political shift. Reformist factions pressure supreme leader to avoid suicidal confrontation. Probability, 10%. Revolutionary Guard controls the decision-making. Do the math. That's a 50% chance of de-escalation, which means 50% chance we're 3 days from regional war. If you made it this far, you're not looking for entertainment, you're looking for analysis that connects dots mainstream coverage won't touch. This channel exists to track institutional power structures, military strategy patterns, and geopolitical leverage points. No ads, no sponsors, no agenda except information. If that's valuable, subscribe, turn on notifications. Share this with people who need to understand what's coming. The 72-hour clock is ticking. Whether it runs out or gets reset depends on decisions being made right now in Tehran, Washington, and Riyadh. Your move is simple: stay informed, because when this escalates, you won't get warning from cable news. You'll get it from oil prices, troop deployments, and authorization votes. Comment your escalation prediction, de-escalate, or 72 hours. Let's see where this community stands. Out.